My brother evicted me while I was in the hospital, so I let him watch me claim what he stole. I woke up tasting metal and noise. My chest hurt like a fist. Lights buzzed above. A drip ticked beside the bed. I reached for my phone and found a voicemail from Mark. His voice was casual, smiling in the way that sounded like a knife. "Hey, since you're not at the house, I cleared your stuff out. Consider this your 30-day eviction notice." The words hit me like a wall. I dropped the phone. It skidded across the sheet and landed face down. I tried to sit up. Pain shot through my side and I cried out. A nurse rushed in, helping me back down gently. She checked my stitches, her face kind but worried. My hand shook when I dialed again. The message played like a cold clock. I pushed harder, listening for a trace of a joke, but Mark sounded proud. I felt a hollow spread inside me, like something important had been taken while I slept. I thought of the house, our house, full of memories and my father's crooked handwriting on an old paper. I tried to breathe slow. The room spun a little. The nurse asked if I needed anything, and I said I needed my keys. She paused like she didn't know the weight of that request. I tried to stand anyway. Pain spiked. I tasted bile. I thought, this has to be a mistake. I reached for the phone again, my fingers trembling, and found a new message waiting in my inbox. Hit subscribe for more true revenge stories. The nurse steadied me as I lay back against the pillows. My side burned like fire each time I tried to move. She asked if I needed anything, and I told her I needed a phone. She handed me hers, and I typed in my email with slow, shaky fingers. I prayed Mark's message had been some sick joke. Maybe he panicked. Maybe he thought I wasn't coming home soon. Maybe anything. But the email loaded, and the hope inside me cracked. It was a formal eviction filing. Stamped. Signed. Submitted yesterday. Filed while I was unconscious on an operating table. My throat tightened hard. I tried to read every line, but the words swirled. Tenant abandonment. Failure to occupy. Sole property control. All built on lies. All planned before I even woke up. My heartbeat thudded in my ears. My hands shook so badly the nurse had to take the phone before I dropped it. "You're not supposed to be dealing with stress right now," she said gently. Her voice felt far away. I wanted to scream. My house. My father's house. Evicted while I was cut open and stitched shut. I felt my jaw clench until it hurt. Mark knew where I was. He knew I couldn't fight back. That thought alone made the rage come fast and dark. I whispered, "He actually did it." Because in that moment it finally became real. If you're hooked already, pause a second and hit subscribe for more true revenge stories just like this one. The nurse left the room, and I sat holding the edge of the blanket like it could stop my hands from shaking. My phone buzzed again. It was a text from my neighbor, Mrs. Hill. She never sent long messages, but this one filled the whole screen. "Mark told everyone you moved away. He said you abandoned the house. He said you didn't want it anymore." The words felt like stones dropping one by one inside my chest. I read them 3 times, hoping I'd misunderstood. But the meaning was sharp and simple. He told the whole street I had walked away. Gone. Done. Like I didn't care about the place my father built with his own hands. Like I wanted to leave the room still filled with his scent and his tools and his old records. My breath shook. Abandoned. Moved away. Didn't want it anymore. That lie was big. Too big to fix with a single text or call. It wasn't an accident. It was a story he wanted people to believe. A story that made his theft look clean. I closed my eyes, and my voice came out small but steady. He stole it. For the first time, I said it out loud. And when I opened my eyes again, I felt something new in my stomach, something hotter than fear. Anger. Lying in that hospital bed, I felt my father's presence stronger than I had in years. Maybe it was the pain medicine. Maybe it was the shock. Or maybe it was memory trying to guide me. I closed my eyes, and suddenly I was back in his workshop years earlier, the smell of sawdust everywhere. He stood at his workbench, his big hands smoothing a board. "Listen, Ethan," he said. "One day this house will be yours to care for. You're the one who loves it. You're the one who keeps it alive." He'd smiled at me, warm and proud. Your brother gets his share of the estate, but the house stays for you. As long as you want it. That line stuck with me like glue. As long as you want it. When he died, the will said the same thing. The house was split between us legally, but the clause was clear. I could live there forever if I maintained it. Mark had hated that. He said it wasn't fair. He said Dad always chose me. I thought he would get over it. Instead, he got quiet, cold, careful. Lying there now, I realized something dreaded. Mark didn't act on impulse. He had waited. Waited for weakness. Waited for silence. Waited for me to be alone in a hospital bed. This wasn't sudden. It was planned. The next afternoon, sunlight spilled across my hospital blanket when my friend Leo walked in. He carried a bag of chips and a worried look. "Man, you look awful," he said, but softly. Then he sat and rubbed his hands together like he was afraid to start talking. "Ethan, I need to tell you something." My stomach tightened. Everything lately felt like another blow. He pulled up pictures on his phone. "I'm sorry, but you need to see this." Photo after photo showed Mark walking through my house with strangers, real estate agents, people in suits, people pointing at walls, people measuring rooms, people smiling like they'd found something they wanted to buy. "He's been showing your house for days," Leo said. "Told agents he's the full owner. Said you left town and he's cleaning up the mess you made." My mouth went dry. I stared at the screen like it could change if I blinked enough times. But the photos stayed the same. Mark opening the back door. Mark laughing with a couple in the kitchen. Mark shaking hands in my father's old living room. "He's selling it," I whispered. Leo nodded, eyes sad. "Yeah, and fast." My chest tightened so much the heart monitor beeped faster. Something inside me froze. If Mark was bringing agents inside, he was nearly done, and I had almost nothing left to fight with. Yet, when Leo left, I was shaking so much I had to breathe into my hands. I needed answers, so I grabbed my phone even though the doctor had told me to rest. I opened Mark's social media page, and there it was, his newest post. A picture of him standing on my front porch, keys dangling from his fingers like trophies. His smile stretched wide. His caption read, "Finally taking control of what should have been mine since day one." Underneath were comments that made my chest burn. "Congrats on the new house. You deserve it, bro. It's about time. You're way more responsible than your brother anyway." I felt something inside me crack open. He wasn't hiding it. He wasn't ashamed. He was proud. He had taken my illness as a chance to grab the one place that carried my father's memory. And now he wanted applause for it. My hands curled into fists. The monitor beeped faster again. I forced myself to breathe slow, but the anger kept rising. I whispered, "This isn't over." And even though the room felt small and my body felt weak, those words felt strong. Stronger than I'd felt since the surgery. Stronger than fear. I would not let him take everything. Not without a fight. The nurse came in again just as I tried shifting in the bed. I winced, pressing my hand to the bandages on my side. She frowned. "You can't keep moving like that. Your stitches can tear." I nodded, but my mind wasn't in the room. All I could see was Mark smiling on that porch. All I could hear were agents walking through my living room. All I could feel was the cold shock of losing everything my father left me. "You need rest," the nurse said, but rest felt like surrender. "I have to go," I said, trying to swing my legs off the bed. Her eyes widened. "Absolutely not. You're still healing. You can't leave yet." But the panic in me was louder. "He's taking my house," I said, voice breaking. "He's really doing it." She reached for my shoulder gently. "I'm sure things will be okay. But if you stand right now, you could hurt yourself badly." I tried anyway. Pain shot through my ribs like lightning. My vision blurred. I grabbed the metal rail, gasping. The nurse held me firmly, guiding me back. "Please," she whispered. "Don't make this worse." I closed my eyes, breathing hard. I couldn't fight like this. Not yet. But the anger didn't fade. And as I lay there, staring at the ceiling, I made a silent promise. The moment I could stand, really stand, I would take everything back. Leo picked me up from the hospital 2 days later. I moved slow, holding my side, each step a reminder that my body still wasn't ready for any of this. But staying in that hospital bed felt worse than the pain. I needed to see the house with my own eyes. When we pulled up to the curb, my heart stopped. My home, my father's home, looked the same from the outside, but something felt wrong. Too still, too clean, too empty. I reached for my keys, breathing hard, trying to prepare myself. The moment I pushed the key into the lock, it didn't turn. I tried again, and again. Then I froze. The locks had been changed. My hand shook on the doorknob. The cold metal felt foreign, like it belonged to someone else now. The truth hit me harder than the surgery ever had. Mark had locked me out of my own house while I was recovering in a hospital bed. I stepped back, dizzy. The world felt tilted. I grabbed the porch railing to steady myself. That's when the door opened from the inside. A woman stepped out, a realtor holding a folder full of documents. She blinked at me with polite confusion. "Oh, you must be Mark's brother." My mouth went dry. She smiled. "He said you moved out. We're listing the house tomorrow." My knees softened. Leo grabbed my arm before I tipped forward. And then, behind her, I saw him. Mark stepped into view, arms crossed, smiling like he had been waiting for this moment. The realtor turned to Mark. "I was just explaining the showing schedule. Everything is moving right on track." She handed him a clipboard, then walked off toward her car, heels tapping across the driveway. The moment she was gone, I stared at Mark. He didn't flinch, didn't blink. He just looked proud. "So," he said, "you made it out of the hospital." His tone was flat, like I'd simply taken too long to pick up lunch. "My key doesn't work," I said. My voice sounded strange, thin, breathless. "Yeah," he replied easily. "Had to switch the locks. You weren't living here anymore." I stepped closer, ignoring the fire in my ribs. "I live here. I've always lived here. It's our house." He lifted a brow. It was our house. Now it's mine." I looked at the windows. Some of the curtains were missing. Boxes sat stacked inside. My boxes, or his, couldn't tell. "You told people I moved away," I said. "Well, you weren't there," he said with a shrug. "And you don't pay rent, so I handled it." My fingers curled into fists. "Because I don't have to. Dad." He cut me off. "Dad's dead. And so is that stupid clause. I'm done living in your shadow." My chest tightened. "You can't do this." "Oh, I already did." His smile sharpened. Then the world spun, and my legs buckled. Leo caught me as everything went dark. I woke up in the ER again, lights bright and cold. A doctor hovered over me. "You fainted from pain and stress," he said. "Your stitches are irritated. You need rest." Rest. The word meant nothing anymore. I lay still, staring at the ceiling while the doctor gave instructions I barely heard. All I could think about was Mark's smile. His voice. The door shutting in my face. The realtor walking out of the home I'd built with my father. My home being treated like a prize Mark finally stole. When the doctor left, I closed my eyes and breathed slow. But the anger kept rising, thick and dark, filling every part of me. Later that night, the nurse brought my things in a small plastic bag. My phone buzzed nonstop. Messages from neighbors, from coworkers, and from a number I didn't recognize, 3 missed calls in a row. But one message stood out. A lawyer's email with an attachment. I opened it. My heart dropped. It was a legal packet from Mark's attorney, claiming sole ownership of the house. At the bottom was a scanned document with my father's signature. Except, it wasn't his. It was crooked. Wrong. Off. He had forged Dad's name. He had crossed the final line. My hands shook so badly I had to set the phone down. This wasn't just betrayal now. This was war. The next morning, I sat propped against my pillows, scrolling through the forged document over and over. My father's signature wasn't even close. Dad had a sharp, slanted E. This one was round. Lazy. Wrong. I felt sick, but I made myself read every page. The packet claimed Dad changed the will before he died. giving Mark the house fully. It also said I had voluntarily vacated the property. Lies. All of it. Then my phone buzzed again. It was Mrs. Hill, the neighbor who had texted me earlier. She sent a photo with the message, "Thought you should see this before it disappears." The picture showed Mark in the driveway beside a large dumpster. And inside it, my belongings. Family heirlooms. The handmade table Dad carved. Boxes labeled memories. Old photo albums. Dad's tools. Pieces of my life tossed like trash. I stared at the photo until my eyes burned. My chest ached so hard the monitor beeped again. The nurse rushed in, but I waved her off. I didn't want comfort. I wanted answers. Why was he doing this? What did he gain? Why now? But deep down I already knew. He thought I couldn't fight back. I closed my eyes and whispered, "Not anymore," because something inside me had snapped the moment I saw my father's tools in that dumpster. This wasn't just a house he was trying to steal. This was my father's legacy. 2 days later, I managed to sign myself out of the hospital. I wasn't healed, but I couldn't stay there anymore. Leo picked me up again and drove me across town, not to my house, but to a public storage lot. "Mark rented a unit in your name," Leo said, holding out a printed receipt. "Thought you should see what he put in it." The smell of dust hit me as I lifted the metal door. Inside were boxes stacked messily. Some were crushed, some half open. Many items were missing, expensive things like my camera, my old laptop, even the rare records Dad collected. Gone. I knelt down, wincing as my stitches tugged, and opened a broken box. Inside were photos, wrapped in torn paper. One frame was shattered. I lifted the pieces carefully and noticed something tucked behind the cardboard backing. A folded paper. With shaking hands, I opened it. It was my father's handwriting, real handwriting. Sharp, slanted, strong. A letter he had left years ago, the original version, stating clearly that I was to keep the house as long as I wanted it. Not Mark. Not shared. Me. My breath caught. This was proof. Real proof. I held it to my chest, feeling my father's words steady me. For the first time since waking from surgery, I felt something like hope. Mark had forged a signature, but he couldn't erase the truth my father left behind. And now I had it. I sat on the cold floor of the storage unit, holding my father's letter like it was the last piece of truth I had left. Leo hovered in the doorway, watching me carefully. "There's more," he said quietly. I opened another box. Clothes stuffed in tight, shoes thrown on top, books bent and ripped. It looked like someone packed in a hurry, or worse, someone who didn't care what he was destroying. Then I saw the empty spaces. I knew exactly what had been inside them. My coin collection, Dad's engraved watch, the signed baseball we kept locked in a case. All gone. I checked the shelves in the back. A few crates were missing entirely. I felt a hard ache in my throat, but the anger underneath kept me steady. I went through every item carefully, moving slow to protect my stitches. Halfway through, I spotted another crushed picture frame. I picked it up gently. Inside was a photo of me and Dad fixing the fence years ago. My face younger, his smile wide. But as I pulled the frame apart, hoping maybe another hidden note was tucked inside, I found nothing except cracked glass. Still, the first letter was enough. It didn't just prove Mark lied. Proved Dad trusted me even after death. Leo knelt beside me. "What now?" I looked around the messy, half-empty storage unit. "Now," I said, "I gather everything he stole, because this place wasn't just storage. It was evidence. Every broken thing was a piece of the truth, and I planned to use all of it." Back at my friend's place, I spread everything out on the living room floor, the forged document, the real letter, photos of the dumpster, and now the storage receipt. The room looked like a crime board from a detective show. I sat cross-legged, breathing slow. My ribs throbbed. My stitches stung. But I kept going. I read my father's real letter again. His handwriting was steady, clear, filled with the same warmth he always had when he spoke to me. "Ethan will care for this home. Ethan will keep it standing." Every word cut deeper because Mark had tried so hard to bury them. I held the forged document beside it. The difference was so obvious it made my chest tighten. Dad's signature had always leaned right. The fake one leaned left. I took photos of both for proof. Then I compared dates, looking closer. The forged date was 1 month after Dad died. Impossible. Dad couldn't sign anything after that. I felt sick thinking Mark hadn't even bothered to make it believable. I messaged Mrs. Hill. "Can you send me the exact day Mark told everyone I moved away?" She replied fast. "Same day you went into surgery." So he hadn't waited. He hadn't hesitated. He had acted the moment he knew I couldn't defend myself. I stared at the wall, feeling my jaw lock. Then I took Dad's letter and placed it in a folder labeled Truth. For the first time since this nightmare began, I felt a spark inside me. I wasn't just hurt anymore. I was ready. The next step was simple but painful. Follow the paper trail. Leo drove me to the utility office because I still couldn't lift much or move fast without sharp stabs of pain. The clerk behind the counter typed in the house address, then frowned. "All utilities were transferred into Mark's name last week," she said. My stomach twisted. "What day?" She turned her screen. "The morning after you were admitted for surgery." Of course. He wasted no time. "Did he bring any proof he owned the house?" I asked. She nodded. "He brought signed documents showing sole ownership." She said it casually, not knowing she had just confirmed another piece of the puzzle. His forged papers weren't just for show. He used them everywhere. I felt heat rise under my skin, but I forced my voice to stay calm. "Could I get a copy of the transfer history?" She printed it. The dates lined up exactly with the forged paperwork. Same week, same signatures, same lies. Back in the car, I studied the printout. Seeing it all on paper made my chest tight. He had taken over the house room by room, bill by bill, like he was erasing me from my own life. "It's like he planned every move," I muttered. Leo nodded. "He did. But now we're planning ours." I leaned my head back, breathing slow through the pain. Mark wanted control. He wanted the house clean and clear under his name. But every transfer he made, every lie he filed, every paper he touched, it all became evidence. And evidence was exactly what I needed. When I got home to Leo's place, I opened my laptop and logged into the joint maintenance fund Dad had set up years ago. It was meant for house repairs, roofing, painting, replacing old pipes. We both had access. We both were supposed to contribute. The balance flashed on the screen. $14.72. I froze. That account should have had thousands. I clicked through the history, my heart pounding harder each time another withdrawal appeared. $600, $1,200, $450, $900, $3,000. All sent to Mark. All labeled as house needs or emergency repairs. Except none of those repairs ever happened. I opened the oldest withdrawal. Date: 2 days before Dad's funeral. My stomach twisted. He had started taking money before the dirt on the grave had settled. I took screenshots of every transaction and saved them in a folder called Theft. The more I scrolled, the deeper the pattern went. He had drained the account dry over the past year, slowly and carefully, hoping I'd never check. Leo leaned over my shoulder. "This is criminal," he muttered. I nodded. And he left his name on every transfer. The thought was bitter but strangely satisfying. Mark wasn't careful enough to hide his tracks. Maybe he thought I'd never look. Maybe he believed I was too trusting, too soft, too weak. But I wasn't that person anymore. I saved the final screenshot and whispered, "You took everything you could." Then I shut the laptop. Now I take it back. I didn't expect my sister, Lily, to call that night. We hadn't talked much since Dad passed. But when I answered, she was already crying. "Ethan, I heard everything. I'm so sorry." Her voice cracked, and I froze, unsure what she knew. "Lily, did Mark tell you about the eviction?" She sniffed. "He bragged about it." My grip tightened on the phone. "Bragged?" "Yes," she said, voice small. "He told me he was waiting for you to be weak. That once you were out of the house, he'd finally get what he deserved." He laughed, Ethan. I went still. The room around me faded. Hearing it from neighbors hurt. Hearing it from friends hurt. But hearing it from family? That broke something harder inside me. He planned to take everything, Lily continued. The house, the money, even Dad's things. He said you wouldn't fight. She paused. He said you couldn't fight. A long silence filled the line. I wiped my face with my sleeve. Lily, would you testify to that? She hesitated only a second. Yes, Dad wanted you to have that house. Mark always hated it. I'm done protecting him. Something heavy lifted from my chest. For a moment, I didn't know whether to cry or breathe easier. My own sister, quiet, gentle Lily, was willing to stand beside me. Thank you, I whispered, because her voice wasn't just comfort. It was leverage. It was proof. And now I finally had a real ally in the family. The next morning, while I was sorting more of the evidence folders, an unexpected email arrived. The subject line made my stomach clench. Finalizing the property sale. It was from a development company I had never heard of. I opened it slowly, half scared of what I'd find. Inside was a cheerful message. Hello, Ethan. We look forward to completing the sale of the property Mark promised. Attached are the preliminary plans. My heart hammered as I clicked the attachment. The blueprints unfolded across my screen. Sketches, notes, and bright red lines showing the entire house torn down, flattened, erased. A new modern duplex drawn right on top of the place where Dad had read his newspaper every morning. The kitchen where we ate burnt pancakes. The backyard where he taught me to swing a hammer. Gone. All of it. The developers wrote like the deal was already done. Like Mark had the right to make promises in my place. Like my home was just a blank piece of land waiting to be rebuilt. I gripped the table until my knuckles turned white. Tearing the house down wasn't just greed. It was destruction. It was wiping away everything Dad left me. Leo leaned over my shoulder. They think Mark owns it. No, I said. They think Mark tricked me into selling it. I saved every file, every email, every blueprint. Another brick in the wall I was building against him. For the first time in days, the fire inside me didn't feel wild. Felt focused. And Mark had no idea how big of a mistake he'd made. By that afternoon, I knew I needed real help. Someone who understood property law better than I ever could. Leo gave me the name of an attorney known for tearing apart shady real estate cases. Her name was Karen Doyle, and she had a reputation for being relentless. When I called, she picked up on the second ring. "You're the one with the forged will?" she asked before I even introduced myself. "Yes," I said. "My brother." "Bring everything," she cut in. "Don't leave out a single detail. The more he messed up, the easier this gets." I spent the next hour sending her photos, documents, emails, the real letter from Dad, the fake signature comparison, everything. Each upload made my pulse race faster. After reviewing the files, she called me back. "Ethan," she said, voice firm, "your brother didn't just try to take the house. He committed multiple crimes." I swallowed. "Can I get it back?" "You can get everything back." Her voice didn't shake. Mine almost did. She went on. "The forged will alone is enough to tear apart every claim he made. The fake signature, the dates, the utility transfers, they all reveal intent. And the money he took? That's theft. You have enough to not only win, but to destroy him legally." Destroy him. The words felt heavy. But right. "What do we do first?" I asked. "We don't fight quietly," she said. "We shine light on every lie he tried to hide." I nodded, even though she couldn't see me. "This ends," she said, "exactly where it began." A chill ran through me. "The house," I whispered. Karen and I stayed on the phone late into the evening, crafting what she called the plan. She spoke like someone who had fought battles like this before, and won each one. Every time I felt doubt creep in, she cut through it with facts and strategy. "We start with documents," she said. "Then witnesses. Then the house." "The house?" I asked again, still shaky. "Yes, that's where he wants to show off. That's where he lies best. So that's where we expose him." Her calm confidence steadied me. She said she would file objections, freeze the attempted sale, notify the developers, and prepare the fraud case. "But the key," she added, is timing. We need Mark in public. Surrounded, proud, comfortable. That's when he slips. I thought of Mark smiling on my porch, showing agents around like he owned everything, laughing with his friends about finally getting what he deserved. Karen said, "When is he most likely to show off again?" I shook my head, then paused. He mentioned something to the realtor, a walkthrough day, a celebration after the listing. Perfect, she said. You'll go. I can't even step inside, I whispered. You won't go alone. She outlined the team. Police officer, property inspector, notary, developer rep, every person who had authority to break his lies apart. And she'd be there too, standing at my side. When the call ended, I sat in silence. This wasn't revenge born from anger anymore. It was justice shaped by truth. And I finally felt ready. Before I faced Mark again, I needed one last hospital check. The nurse who had cared for me earlier greeted me with a soft smile. You're walking much steadier now. Trying my best, I said, easing myself onto the exam table. She checked the stitches gently. You've healed well, she said. But no heavy lifting. No sudden movements. No stress if you can avoid it. I almost laughed. I'm not lifting anything heavy. She raised an eyebrow. What are you lifting then? I looked her straight in the eyes. Justice. She chuckled, thinking it was a joke. But I wasn't joking. Not even a little. She signed my discharge papers, patting my shoulder. Stay safe, and take things slow. But slow wasn't an option. Not anymore. As Leo drove me back to his place, I stared out the window, thinking of the storage unit, the forged papers, the dumpster, the house where my father's voice still lived in the walls. I felt the fear. I felt the pain. But beneath all of it was something stronger. Purpose. That night, I laid out everything on the floor again, organizing each piece in the order Karen needed. Legal documents, photos, statements, receipts, theft records, the real letter from Dad. Felt like building armor. And when I zipped the binder closed, my hands stopped trembling. Tomorrow, I told myself, everything changes. Tomorrow, I stand back up. Leo cleared out his spare room so I could work without distraction. I turned the walls into a giant timeline. Every lie, every forged date, every stolen item pinned in neat rows. It looked wild, but it made sense. Finally, everything connected. I taped the forged will on the left side of the wall. Next to it, I pinned my father's real letter. The difference between them glowed like a warning sign. Below them, the bank withdrawal screenshots formed a long column, each one proof that Mark had drained our maintenance fund on purpose. Beside that, I pinned the developer's email and the blueprints showing my home being torn down. Then the photo of the dumpster, my belongings tossed in like trash. Then Lily's text messages. Then the utility transfers. Then the realtor photos of Mark laughing inside my house. Piece by piece, the board became a map of betrayal. Leo stepped into the hallway and whistled. It looks like a crime museum. It is, I said quietly. And when we walk into that house, everything here will matter. I added the last piece. A printed list of every witness Karen planned to bring. A police officer, a notary, property inspector, Karen herself, and me finally ready. I stepped back and looked at the full wall. For a moment, the weight of it made the room feel smaller. But then something surprising happened. I felt stronger. Tomorrow, Mark was hosting a celebration at the house. Tomorrow, he'd think he won. And tomorrow, I would take everything back. The morning of Mark's big celebration began with a heavy sky, the kind that felt like it held its breath. Leo handed me a thermos of tea and said, "You ready?" I wasn't sure if anyone could ever be ready for something like this, but I nodded anyway. As we drove toward the house, my stomach twisted. I hadn't been inside since the day the locks were changed. The thought made my chest tighten, but I kept breathing slow. Karen had told me to stay calm. Let him talk, she'd said. Let him boast. Arrogance is evidence. When we pulled up to the curb, I saw cars lining the street. Neighbors, friends, people Mark wanted to impress. Laughter drifted from the backyard, and I could almost picture him smiling, telling everyone he finally took control. Leo touched my shoulder. You don't have to go in first. I do, I said. I have to see him. Before heading inside, I sent one last message to Karen. Everything is in place. She responded instantly, we'll be there in 10. I stepped through the unlocked side gate, feeling every heartbeat in my ribs. The yard was decorated with balloons and banners, like this was a graduation or birthday. People stood around holding drinks, talking about the new owner. My jaw clenched. Mark wasn't just stealing my house, he was celebrating it. Someone turned and whispered, "Is that Ethan?" I kept walking. Mark had no idea what was coming. I stood in the backyard long enough for people to notice, but not long enough for Mark to reach me. His smile dropped when he saw me. He froze mid-sentence, holding a drink like he suddenly didn't know what to do with his hands. Before he could speak, the side gate opened again. Karen walked in first, sharp suit, calm eyes. Behind her came the county property inspector, a police officer, a notary, and a man in a neat jacket carrying a folder, the developer representative. The crowd quieted. People stepped back, confused. Some whispered. Some stared at me like I had brought a storm with me. I felt my throat tighten, but I stood tall. Mark pushed through the guests. "Ethan, what are you doing? You can't just show up." Karen stepped beside me. "He absolutely can." Her voice was steady, loud enough for everyone to hear. The officer nodded at me. "Mr. Porter?" "Yes," I said. Karen opened her briefcase. "We're here for a formal property dispute review." The guests murmured. Someone whispered, "What's going on?" Mark's face went pale, then angry. "You brought a circus? You embarrassed yourself, not me." "That's funny," Karen said, "because we haven't even begun." The inspector took out a clipboard. "We'll need to examine all ownership claims." Mark looked around wildly, like he expected someone to save him. But no one moved. My heart beat slow and steady. He still didn't know how much I had. But he was about to find out. Mark marched toward me, jaw tight. "You weren't invited." I met his eyes without flinching. "I know." He opened his mouth, ready to spit another lie. But then Karen stepped forward and placed a folder into his hands. "We'll start with these." He frowned and opened it. The forged documents stared back at him. Every signature he had copied, every fake claim he had filed, every page he thought I'd never see. His hand trembled as he realized what he was holding. "These," Karen announced loudly so everyone could hear, "are illegal, and we have proof you created them." The crowd gasped. A few people stepped back from Mark like his guilt was contagious. Someone whispered, "Those are fake." Another added, "He said his dad changed the will." Mark's face turned red. You're twisting things. They're real." "No," Karen said. "They're sloppy." She held up the real letter from my father. The difference between the signatures was obvious, even from a distance. Mark sputtered, "This is fake." "Actually," Karen said, "it was found hidden in one of Ethan's damaged belongings. Belongings you threw into a dumpster. That hit him hard." His mouth snapped shut. My chest rose and fell slowly. I wasn't trembling anymore. The truth was out now. And for the first time, Mark looked unsure. He had stood so tall when I was weak. But now he was shrinking. I stepped closer, my ribs aching, but my voice steady. "You threw away Dad's things, Mark." "My things. Everything." He shook his head fast. "You abandoned the house. I had to clear it." Leo held up his phone, pressing play on a recording he captured from Mrs. Hill's porch weeks earlier. Mark's voice filled the yard. "He'll never fight back. He's too weak. Once he's out, I'll finally have the place to myself." The backyard went silent. Mark lunged toward Leo, but the officer stepped between them. "Stay back, sir." "You recorded me?" Mark yelled. "No," I said. "You recorded yourself every time you bragged." Some guests looked away, ashamed. Others stared at Mark like they didn't know him anymore. I could feel the shift, the moment people realized he wasn't a victim or a hero. He was a thief. I wasn't done. Karen lifted another folder. This is proof of the thousands taken from the joint maintenance fund. She tapped the pages. Every withdrawal shows your name. Mark stammered. Ethan told me to. Lie again, she said. And I'll add obstruction. The inspector scribbled notes. The developer rep opened his folder, frowning deeper with every line. Mark swallowed, eyes darting around like he was looking for an exit. There wasn't one. The walls he built from lies were finally cracking, and everyone saw it happen. Just when Mark looked like he might break, the inspector cleared his throat. We also need to address the treatment of personal belongings. I pointed toward the projector Karen had set up. On the screen, the photo of the dumpster appeared, my father's tools piled under broken boxes. My childhood photos bent and stained. The table Dad carved. The memories Mark tossed aside like garbage. A loud gasp rippled through the yard. Someone whispered, "That's awful." Another said, "Who does that to family?" Mark grabbed the edges of the table. He lived like a slob. I was cleaning up. Cleaning? I asked, stepping forward. Then why did you steal the expensive items? The watch? The records? The coins? He froze. Karen slid another paper forward. Those items were never found in the storage unit you rented under Ethan's name. More gasps. The developer rep stepped up next, voice tight. Mark, you promised us a property you don't own. You signed contracts you weren't allowed to sign. He reached into his briefcase and pulled out a document. With a sharp motion, he tore it in half. Your deal is void. Permanently. The rip echoed through the stunned yard. Mark opened his mouth to argue, but nothing came out. His confidence had drained completely, replaced by panic. I watched his hands tremble. For the first time, he felt what he had made me feel, powerless. Before Mark could gather himself, Karen pressed a button on the projector again. A new audio clip filled the backyard. My sister Lily's shaky voice. She had recorded her own statement for the case. Mark told me he would wait for Ethan to be weak, Lily said. He wanted the house since Dad died. He said the moment Ethan couldn't fight, he'd take everything. The entire crowd went still. Mark spun toward the speakers, red-faced. She's lying. She always hated me. But then Lily stepped forward from the side gate. I hadn't even known she was coming. She walked calmly, nervously, but determined. I'm not lying, she said. I'm done covering for you. Mark's rage twisted into something darker. You little. The police officer raised a hand. Sir, step back. People in the crowd murmured, shifting away from him. Some shook their heads. Some avoided eye contact entirely. The officer stared at Mark with a firm gaze. Any aggression today will be added to your charges. Mark's jaw worked like he wanted to shout but couldn't. Karen nodded to Lily. Thank you for your bravery. Lily stepped beside me, her hand shaking as she reached for mine. I squeezed it, my chest tight with both grief and gratitude. Mark glared at us like we were strangers. Maybe we were. Maybe we always had been. I took a slow breath and said, Dad trusted us. You destroyed that. And for the first time, Mark didn't fight back. He just looked small. Karen wasn't finished. She opened yet another folder and handed copies to the inspector and the police officer. These, she said, are the bank records showing theft. The inspector read the first page, eyebrows rising. These are direct transfers into your account, he said to Mark. You labeled them as house repairs. Mark swallowed. They were repairs. No, I said quietly. You never fixed anything. The inspector flipped pages, shaking his head. This is not only theft. It's intentional misuse of shared funds. People in the yard whispered, shocked. This wasn't just family drama anymore. It was crime. Karen pointed to the next slide on the projector. A timeline of every dollar stolen. The numbers glowed bright against the screen. Over the last year, Karen said, you drained the account dry. More than $6,000 gone. All while Ethan was maintaining the house alone. Mark rubbed his forehead. This is twisted. He told me to. The inspector cut him off. Enough. The evidence is clear. Then the police officer stepped forward, holding a document. Mr. Porter, this shows probable cause for financial fraud. Mark's mouth fell open. You can't be serious. I am, the officer said. Across the yard, guests shifted away. Someone muttered, I can't believe he'd do that. Mark looked around, desperate for support, but found none. I watched him, and in that moment, something inside me settled. Not joy, not pride, just truth. This wasn't about revenge. This was about the damage he caused, and the cost he never thought he'd pay. Before the officer could move on, the developer representative stepped forward again. He held a clipboard full of notes and shook his head. I have one more thing to address. Everyone quieted. You told us, he said to Mark, that the property was yours. You signed our papers. You allowed us to begin planning demolition. You wasted our time and resources. He pointed to the house behind us, the walls holding my father's memories. You don't even own it. Mark looked cornered. I was about to finalize. No, the developer said. You were about to commit fraud against our company too. He tore another document in half, a letter of intent. The rip echoed through the backyard like a warning shot. Mark's face drained of color. Stop, please. I can fix this. I just need. The inspector interrupted him. Actually, you don't get to fix anything. He flipped the last page of his notes. According to the original will and the property clause, this house belongs to Ethan. Fully. Permanently. A wave of murmurs surged through the crowd. Some people even clapped quietly. Others nodded at me with small, supportive smiles. Mark sputtered. This is wrong. It's fake paperwork. Karen lifted the real letter from my father again. No, Mark. This is the truth. This is what Dad wanted. The police officer stepped closer. And now that the property dispute is settled, we'll move forward with charges. Mark took a step back, shaking not with fear, but with the realization that everything he built on lies was crumbling. I finally exhaled. The house was mine. The truth had won. The officer held out another paper, this one longer, more serious. The entire yard grew quiet as he spoke. Mark Porter, you are being officially served with notice of investigation for the following potential charges: forgery, identity theft, property interference, and financial fraud. Guests gasped. Someone whispered, identity theft? Someone else said, he forged his own dad's will. Mark backed up, shaking his head. No, 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 this is insane. This is family business. You can't. Forgery isn't a family matter, the officer said firmly. It's a crime. Mark turned to actually run, toward the side gate. But the officer was faster. He grabbed Mark by the arm and pulled him back. Don't make this harder on yourself. Mark breathed hard, wild, trapped. He looked at me with a mix of anger and fear. You did this. You destroyed my life. I shook my head slowly. You destroyed it yourself. Karen stepped beside me. Every action today is the result of his choices. Mark's knees weakened. The officer guided him to sit on a bench so he wouldn't collapse. For a moment, just a moment, I felt a sting behind my eyes. Not sadness, not guilt, but closure. I had seen him powerful. I had seen him cruel. But now I saw the truth. He was just a scared man who thought he'd never get caught. And now, in front of everyone he bragged to, he was losing everything. The inspector walked up the porch steps and lifted a loudspeaker so the whole crowd could hear his final assessment. This property legally belongs to Ethan Porter. All claims made by Mark Porter are invalid. Some people clapped. Others sighed in relief. A few just stared, shocked by how quickly everything had changed. Mark buried his face in his hands. I stepped forward, clutching my father's real letter gently. My hands didn't shake this time. My voice didn't crack. I felt steady, strong. This, I said, holding up the paper, is the last thing Dad ever wrote about the house. He trusted me to keep it standing. He trusted me to protect it. I looked right at Mark. And I will. He didn't respond. He couldn't. Karen added, the original will and letter override every false claim. Ethan has full rights. The inspector nodded. And Mark needs to vacate immediately. He has no legal claim to be here. The police officer stepped closer, watching Mark carefully. People in the crowd whispered words like, "Justice," "Finally," and "About time." Their voices blended together, but I barely heard them. My focus stayed on the house. Its windows, its porch, its memories. Dad's house. My house. Mine again. A wave of peace washed through me. Not loud or wild, but quiet and deep. And when I lowered the letter, the sun hit the page just right, making Dad's handwriting glow. Felt like he was standing with me. The officer cleared his throat and stepped toward Mark, who sat hunched over on the bench. "Mr. Porter," he said firmly, "you are now being served with your official notice of charges." He held out a thick envelope. Mark didn't reach for it. The officer placed it on his lap. "For record purposes," the officer continued, "these include forgery, identity theft, property interference, and financial fraud. You are required to appear in court. Any attempt to leave the state or destroy evidence will be met with immediate arrest." Mark stared at the grass, refusing to look up. "Do you understand?" the officer asked. Mark didn't answer. His jaw clenched tight. His shoulders shook slightly, not from anger this time, but from fear. Real fear. The officer placed a hand on his shoulder. "I'll take that as a yes." People around us whispered. Some stepped farther away. Others gave me small nods, quiet support, like they finally understood what I had survived. Karen leaned close to me. "This is the beginning of the end for him." I nodded, but I didn't feel joy. I felt release. The weight I'd carried since the hospital was finally loosening. Mark finally looked up at me, eyes red. "Why?" he whispered. "Why didn't you just let me have it?" I took a slow breath. "Because it was never yours to take." His face crumpled. The officer rose. "It's time." And as he guided Mark to stand, I realized something important. This wasn't just justice. It was truth finally being seen. The yard had gone quiet again when I opened the last folder, the one I had saved for this moment. Slowly, deliberately, I pulled out the original letter I found hidden in the broken frame at the storage unit. Dad's real handwriting. Dad's real signature. Dad's real wishes. The paper shook slightly in my hands. Not from fear, but from emotion. I stepped in front of the whole crowd. "Before Dad died, he wrote this. It was meant for me." Mark tried to hide it, but it survived. Everyone leaned closer, listening. I read the line Dad had written clearly. "The house stays with Ethan for as long as he wants it. It is his home." Gasps spread across the yard. Even the inspector lifted his eyebrows. Mark let out a choked noise, like the truth had punched the air out of him. No, Dad loved me too, he did," I said softly. "But he trusted me to care for this home. That's all." I folded the letter with slow, careful hands. The sun glowed through the paper for a moment, making the ink shine. Then I looked at Mark. Really looked at him. His face streaked with sweat. His expression broken. His lies gone. "This wasn't about taking something from you," I said. "It was about protecting what he left." Mark covered his face and sobbed. But this time I felt no guilt, no doubt, only clarity. Dad's words had spoken louder than any lie Mark tried to build. The police officer stepped forward again, clipboard in hand. "As the legal owner of the property," he said to me, "you may now decide who has the right to remain here." I nodded slowly, feeling the weight of that authority settle across my shoulders. Then I turned to Mark. "You evicted me while I was in the hospital," I said. My voice wasn't loud, but it carried across the whole yard. "I couldn't stand, couldn't fight, and you threw me out like I was nothing." He stared at me, eyes desperate. "Ethan, please." I held up a hand. He went silent. "I lost my home, my things, my peace, all because you wanted what Dad left me." My heart pounded, not with fear, but with resolve. "So now," I said, "you get to watch me claim what you tried to steal." The officer stepped beside him. "Mark Porter, you need to leave the property." Mark shook his head over and over. "No, this is my family too." I grew up here, Then you should have respected it, I said. People moved aside as the officer guided him toward the front gate. Mark stumbled once, then twice, still looking back at me like he expected me to stop everything and forgive him. But I didn't move. At the gate, he whispered, "You'll regret this." I met his eyes. "No," I said. "This time I won't." The gate shut behind him, and just like that, the thief was the one walking away. When the yard finally cleared, the inspector approached me with a small box and a quiet smile. "These were inside the house on the entry table," he said. "Figured you'd want to be the one to open it." Inside the box were the new keys, shiny, uncut by anyone else's hand. "For the rightful owner," he said. I took them slowly. My fingers brushed the cold metal, and something inside me shifted. For weeks, I had felt like I was floating through a nightmare. But the moment those keys touched my palm, solid, real mine, I felt my feet on the ground again. The inspector stepped back. "Welcome home, Ethan." Tears stung my eyes, but I didn't let them fall. "Not yet." Leo clapped me on the back, smiling big. "You did it, man." We walked through the front door together. The house was messy, half-packed, and smelled like stale air. But it was still my home. My father's walls, my childhood floors, my memories. A few neighbors who stayed behind started clapping softly. I felt heat rise in my face, but the sound warmed me. I stepped into the living room, letting the sunlight wash over me. For the first time since waking in that hospital bed, I didn't feel powerless. I felt present. I felt whole. I felt home. I closed my eyes, gripping the keys. "I'm back," I whispered. And this time, no one could take it away. Later that afternoon, as the backyard cleared and the dust settled, the developer representative approached me with an unexpected offer. "Mr. Porter," he said, smoothing his tie, "after reviewing the situation, our company would like to offer you a restoration grant." I blinked. "A what?" "A grant," he repeated, "to help repair the home after the damage caused during the illegal takeover. We believe in good relationships with the community, and we want to make this right." I stared at him, stunned. "You want to help me fix the house?" He nodded. "Yes, and if you need contractors, we'll arrange them. No cost." Leo let out a low whistle. "Man, that's huge." I felt a warmth spread through my chest. Not anger, not hurt, but something like hope. A door opening after weeks of darkness. I shook the representative's hand. "Thank you. This means a lot." He smiled. "After everything you endured, it's the least we can do." Inside the house, I ran my fingers over the old wooden railing, imagining it restored, polished, shining again like it had when Dad built it. For the first time, the future didn't look broken. It looked reparable, maybe even beautiful. The next morning, sunlight poured through the windows in a way I hadn't seen in weeks. For the first time, the house felt open again. Not tight or stolen or cold. Leo arrived early with coffee and a truck full of supplies. "Let's get your home back in shape," he said, grinning. One by one, neighbors showed up, some with paintbrushes, some with cleaning tools, some carrying small boxes they had rescued from Mark's trash piles. Mrs. Hill handed me a wooden box I thought was gone forever. Inside was one of Dad's old keepsakes. His pocket knife with the initials GP etched into the handle. My throat tightened. I closed my fingers around it, feeling a warmth spread through me. "He didn't get everything," I whispered. "People scrubbed, swept, polished, and repaired. Leo fixed the back gate. Lily helped repaint the living room walls. Someone even brought old floor wax that smelled exactly like the kind Dad used every spring. With each repair, each tool lifted, each board tightened, the house felt more like mine again. It wasn't just wood and walls, it was roots, history, family. By late afternoon, the kitchen was spotless, the living room bright, and the backyard free of the mess Mark had left behind. Everyone clapped when I stepped onto the porch. I wasn't embarrassed this time. I wasn't scared. I was home, truly home. And for the first time since waking in that hospital bed, I felt something I thought I'd lost completely, Peace. That night, after everyone left, I sat on the front porch with a warm drink in my hands. The sky glowed orange, fading into purple. It was quiet. No yelling, no lies, no footsteps sneaking through my house. Just quiet. I leaned back in Dad's old rocking chair, the wood creaking softly under me. The boards beneath my feet felt solid again. Safe. My phone buzzed. Dozens of messages poured in. Neighbors sending support, my sister checking in, co-workers telling me they were proud I stood up for myself. For so long, I felt alone in this battle. But reading those messages, I realized I wasn't alone at all. I looked out at the yard, remembering the moment Mark had me thrown out. Him telling everyone I left. Him acting like I didn't matter. But now, the truth was written everywhere. In the repaired porch, the fresh paint, the keys in my pocket. I survived. I fought. And I won. A breeze drifted through the trees. I closed my eyes and imagined Dad standing beside me, hands on his hips, smiling that proud smile he only gave when I fixed something on my own. I did it, Dad. I whispered. I kept the house standing. The peace settled deeper. This wasn't just a victory. It was a beginning. I stood in the doorway of my home, a place almost stolen, almost destroyed, but now fully restored. My hand rested on the frame, feeling the grain of the wood Dad once sanded smooth. The air was warm. The rooms behind me glowed softly, and for the first time in a long time I felt whole. I stepped out onto the porch and looked at the street where everything had fallen apart, and where everything had come together again. The fear was gone. The anger was gone. What remained was strength. My brother had tried to rip my life apart. He took my things, my memories, my peace. He locked me out of my own home and told the world I had abandoned it. But I hadn't. I never did. And I never would. This house wasn't just walls. It was my father's last gift. My history. My anchor. And now it was safe again. I closed my eyes and let the quiet settle deep into my bones. Then I spoke the words that had waited inside me since the moment I woke in that hospital bed. My brother evicted me while I was in the hospital. So I let him watch as I claimed not just the house, but every piece of myself he tried to take. I stepped inside, locked the door behind me, and finally, breathed free. If you loved this story and want more deep, true revenge tales filled with twists, hit subscribe and never miss the next one. Thank you for watching. Please share your thoughts in the comments.